For tonight's programme, we've come to the home of the London Symphony Orchestra in the heart of the capital. Our audience, as always, reflects the electoral picture across the nation. Welcome to Question Time from London on the BBC News Channel, iPlayer and Sounds. Panel from the government, Alex Davis-Jones, the Justice Minister who has responsibility for victims and for tackling violence against women and girls. Tory grandee Ken Clarke makes his 60th appearance on Question Time tonight, an all-time record. He served under Margaret Thatcher, John Major and David Cameron in a career that spanned 6 decades. Zara Sultana left Labour this year to set up Your Party on the radical left of British politics. She fell out with co-founder Jeremy Corbyn but says they're now reconciled. Danny Kruger defected from the Tories to Reform 2 months ago. He describes his new party as a bit of a pirate ship with an ill-disciplined crew but the wind in its sails. Welcome to our panellists, welcome to our audience here at St Luke's. Lovely to see you. And of course, welcome to you at home. Just sit back and watch the programme or join in the conversation on social media, whichever you prefer. Let's kick off, though, with our first question, which is from Charlie Williams-Ellis.
At the last election, Labour promised that the adults would now be back in the room. After this week's cabinet briefings and internal sniping, where are they?
So, on Tuesday night, sources from within Number 10 were briefing that Keir Starmer was facing a leadership challenge, and Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, was named as one of the challenges. The next day, Keir Starmer condemned that briefing, and he apologised to Wes Streeting. And I think it's fair to say, if that briefing that was coming out, as we think, from Number 10, was supposed to put out the idea that the PM was not going to be long in the job, it's just added fuel to the fire of speculation. Alex, what's going on?
Well, Charlie, you're right. It's been a regrettable distraction, to say the least, about what's going on at the moment. We heard from the Prime Minister earlier regarding this. We've heard from the Health Secretary regarding this. But ultimately, this isn't what the public want. The public want us to be getting on with the job of delivering, of doing what we need to be doing to regrowing the country, growing the economy, ensuring that our public services are well supported. And I understand why people care about this, because they care about the character of the man leading our country. That is only right, that is only natural. And I can only comment about the character of the man that I've been working with for the past 18 months as Prime Minister, and that is delivering, especially in my role as Victims Minister, whether that's for the Hillsborough families, whether that's for families of children who have been killed by their fathers in family court. That is the character of the man that I know, and that is the character of the man that is leading our country.
So, Alex, when you were watching this unfold, with the briefings, and then where Streeting comes out, and then Keir Starmer says, oh, nothing to do with me, Garv, don't know anything about it, did you just have your head in your hands?
It made me angry, Fiona. I think it made everybody angry, because it's drama that we don't need. Look, this happens in every workplace.
Who are you blaming for it?
Well, I'm blaming whoever is responsible for leaking this or for briefing against us. We've got a really important job to do. We've got a really serious job to do, a big job to do in terms of rebuilding our country. You know, Wes just today was out there as the Health Secretary talking about how we get the NHS back on its feet, you know, cutting those waiting times, which is what everybody wants. And this is not helpful, to say the least.
Danny?
Well, I think Keir Starmer probably is a decent and a good man. The problem is, and the reason why the government is falling apart, is that he doesn't actually believe in anything. And he came into government saying that he was going to deliver change, but without any sort of plan. So naturally what happens is, in a situation like this, is everybody starts fighting. That's the essential problem for this government. The public are incredibly disappointed with the government that they elected to deliver change that clearly isn't happening. On every single indication, things are getting worse. So there's a vacuum of leadership, Alex, and everybody, yes, I appreciate you and others trying to do their best, but when you have a philosophical vacuum at the heart of government and no clear plan and a politician at the top who doesn't believe in anything, this is what happens.
No, sorry, Danny, I reject that wholeheartedly. You know, I don't live in a bubble. I speak to people every single day about about life in the real world, and I have been doing a lot of thinking in the last couple of weeks about what does it mean to be a Labour minister in a Labour government.
A bit late to think about that.
No, it's about enabling me as a girl from the valleys whose dad was a miner to represent her community and do the things in government that we need to deliver for people, right? Being in politics is about tough choices. We are making those choices, and it's a Labour government making those choices, and those choices mean that we've got 5 million extra appointments in our NHS. We're ensuring that our veterans and our care leavers have a roof over their head. We're investing in children's education, in our public services. Those are the choices that we can only make, and those are our values, because it's a Labour government making those choices, and I'm proud to be in a Labour government doing those things on behalf of the public.
Man here in the front.
One of the other people that's not been mentioned is Morgan McSweeney and his whole role in this. And the Prime Minister said that he has full confidence in him, he's not going anywhere. We have heard that twice already with Angela Rayner, who he had full confidence in and is now gone, and Lord Mandelson, who he had full confidence in and is now gone. So why is it different the third time? Why should we believe him when twice before we've been told he had confidence in a high-ranking minister? A few days later, he didn't.
So Morgan McSweeney, Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, I should say. Do you want to very briefly answer that?
Well, I would say, and I would echo...
Do you have confidence in him?
I do have confidence in him. I think we wouldn't have a Labour government if it wasn't for Morgan McSweeney. But, you know, this man has worked with the party. He enabled Zara and I to be elected and to be able to do the things I've talked about in terms of delivering for the British public. These are really important missions that we have to deliver on.
Let's get around a few more people. Yes.
Just from the outside, it just looks like number 10 is in an episode of The Traitors.
Yes, and in fact, Wes Streeting called himself a faithful, I think. In reference to, yes, man here.
Fiona, you mentioned head in hands. I think the whole country has its head in their hand every time they put the television on or watch the news. It's all doom, gloom. When's something positive going to happen? That's what the country needs, instead of the doom and gloom that's going on.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So, Ken,
I agree with that.
You've seen your fair share of troubles, I think, politically, fair to say. I mean, I'm just thinking, you were there at the end of Margaret Thatcher's time in government. Does this feel like it has the same kind of end of days?
Oh, yes, there have always been crises. This is quite different. Well, this is symptomatic of a deep crisis in our traditional party political system, I think. We've started with personalities, and that dominates the media and the discussion nowadays. We haven't got on to any of we haven't started with immigration or the economy or anything of that kind. It's just personalities. And this is because people are so angry and disillusioned with the politicians, the people. There's never been a time where the Conservative Party and the Labour Party have both performed so badly in government that they're both deeply unpopular and disliked. And we have fringe parties springing up alike. And both the Conservatives and the Labour Party have got to concentrate on getting back to being serious parties of the centre ground that convince people of their honesty and their competence. And it'll take some time, then we can get back to a sensible political debate. Well, unfortunately, both of them are now deeply unpopular, and that's why people are catching protest votes for reform and other parties, most of which don't have enough serious people and enough serious ideas to govern a country. And the sooner the Labour Party and the Conservative Party stop deciding to divert themselves by plotting against their leader and changing their leader every 5 minutes and having far too many prime ministers, and then as soon as you take over in opposition, having the leaders of the opposition being subjected to bids by people, employing an army of people inside their offices who spend their time leaking and briefing for or against rivals, it only makes things worse. And I do hope, certainly, Kemi below the surface in my party is getting on with the serious business of work on policy, work on strategy. Okay. Make some years it'll take us to look again like a governing party capable of managing the problems. None of this will count the next election. We're all living day to day by opinion polls and headlines, which are all pointless. An election 4 years ahead, we haven't a clue what it will be about. Events, nationally and internationally, will give us a wholly new agenda. And the two big parties, and the Liberals, the serious parties, have got to concentrate on restoring their reputation as serious governing parties. So,
you've got your hands up. I'm going to come to you in a minute, but Zora, you're sitting listening very politely to that. Okay, obviously not being particularly polite about yours.
Sorry, I was being a little...
I might just point out that when it comes to you and Jeremy Corbyn and your party, or whatever you do end up calling it, I mean, you fell out before the thing had even got going.
So just on the question around West Streeting and Keir Starmer, it's like the Cray twins. Both choices are criminally dangerous to the rest of the country, but I'm not sure if West Streeting gets his suits paid for by Lord Wahid Ali. In all seriousness, Alex was listing achievements she thinks this Labour government has done. Since getting into power, it has retained the two-child benefit cap, keeping hundreds of thousands of kids in avoidable poverty that could be ended overnight. It has scrapped winter fuel payments for elderly pensioners. It has attacked disabled people and cut their benefits. And it has also enabled genocide in Gaza. So whoever is at the top of the Labour Party, they are all responsible for everything that I've just listed. And I was really proud to vote against all of those things, because those are things that we should all be opposed to: austerity, enabling genocide, and that's what this Labour Party has become.
Well, look, since we've got you on here, it's the first time you've come on the programme, we're very glad that you have. Let's just talk about your party for a minute. I mean, even before it got going, there was threats of legal action between you and Jeremy Corbyn. There's this issue of thousands of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds.
I think it's fair to say there have been teething issues.
Well, that's one way of describing them, Zara.
Yes.
I mean, possibly verging on the understatement.
Well, if you look across Europe and you look at the emergence of new left parties, it's not an easy, slick process. It is a democratic member-led party. And, of course, when you've got people who are very passionate, sometimes, there are regrettable things that happen. But what we have to focus on is that over 800,000 people initially expressed interest in your party. That tells me that the status quo and what the establishment politicians and the established parties are offering isn't working. People recognise that their lives are harder, their wages are stagnating, their bills are increasing, and at the same time, the super rich in this country are laughing all the way to the bank. The top 50 rich families in this country hold more wealth than 70% of the population. Since 2010 to 24, the billionaires tripled their wealth. Everyone can see it. Their bills are increasing and energy companies are recording record profits. So it's an economic system that is fundamentally broken. But from the Labour Party, from the Conservatives, from Reform, you'll get the same neoliberal politics, the same economic system, and trickle-down economics has fundamentally failed. We've got record levels of inequality, record levels of child poverty, and record levels of billionaire wealth at the same time.
All right, lots of hands up. Ken, can I just hear from the audience and I'll come back to you? Yes, woman there.
This is a mess, actually, and people have lost faith in all parties, actually, if you think about it. No one trusts anyone, and we're actually a joke at the moment globally as well.
Right, OK. Woman there in the glasses in the second row, yes.
Hi, my question's for Alex. You said you support victims, especially women and children. So what's your thoughts on the male migrants coming illegally to this country, being housed in local hotels, and the increase of attacks on women from them?
I'm generally worried about the attacks on women from everyone. The levels of violence against women and girls in this country is intolerable. It's why we've declared it a national emergency, why we have to do more in order to tackle it, and that involves working with everyone in order to do this. I think the new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has been really instrumental in terms of trying to get to grips with this problem, in terms of removing individuals from our country. We've announced that we will be removing any individual who breaks the law in our country on sentencing, rather than waiting for them to fill up places in our prisons, because being in this country is a privilege. It is not a right. And if you come here illegally, then you should be deported. You don't have a right to be here. And if you do, you should follow our rules and you should obey by our laws. But I'm worried about the levels of violence against women and girls everywhere. 3 women a week on average are killed.
Because we don't know the background of these people, so
we don't know the background of anyone.
But
working
when there's loads of male
society,
people attending living in a hotel locally to us, then it's a threat to our women and children when they're walking around in groups and we don't know their background.
We know that women and girls are more likely to be attacked or injured by someone they know, actually. And domestic abuse is probably the highest issue we have at the moment in terms of violence against women and girls. I'm not disputing that there's a problem here. Of course there's a problem here. But it's about looking at this in the whole. We can't do this individually.
OK, there's two of you want to come in on the panel, so just briefly, Dan.
Just quickly, I mean, I think if Alex is sincere about wanting to protect women and girls, and I'm sure she is, then she's got to recognise she's got another problem, which is that this government believes in the international human rights framework, which means that you can't deport illegal immigrants on arrival. Well, you're not doing it, and it's because of legal challenges under the Human Rights Act, which your party brought in. What we absolutely do need to do is do what you said, which is deport people. You won't do it, and I'm afraid it's disingenuous to suggest that these young men who are coming over here do not represent a disproportionate threat to women and children. That is statistically the fact. So to protect them, and also, by the way, to do the right thing by the many millions of people around the world who are displaced and who need help, prioritising the rich, fit young men who can afford to pay thousands of pounds to break into our country illegally, that is not compassionate, either to them or to our people. So, yes, we need to deport people who come in here illegally. The only way to do that is to get out of the European Convention on Human Rights, which you guys won't do.
No, I know you want to go, but let me just bring Zara.
I do find some of the rhetoric around safety, around women and girls, really concerning when, in my home region of the West Midlands, 2 Sikh girls were raped in racially motivated attacks by far-right individuals. And we find very few kind of media coverage of stories like that. And we have to highlight that some of that anti-migrant rhetoric and rhetoric that demonises asylum seekers is sickening. It has led to racial violence in our towns and cities where women and children, based on the colour of their skin and whether they wear a headscarf or not, have been targeted. And this rhetoric has been drip-fed. It's on our front pages. It comes from the highest offices in the country. And what we have to recognise is that the issues in our country, whether it's underfunding of the NHS, the fact that we don't have council houses, low wages and insecure work, those are political decisions made by politicians. They are not the fault of some of the most vulnerable people fleeing war and persecution and put up in, not the Ritz Hotel as some people might want to portray, really shoddy accommodation, rats in the corridors, poor food, but they are demonised and people are being told they're the people taking your jobs, they're the people taking your housing. Please look up, look at the super rich, look at the landlords hiking your rent, look at the energy CEOs making millions of pounds, look at the politicians who are happy to get millionaire donors and freebies but are taking away opportunities from the rest of the country.
Okay. I'm going to move on a minute. I just want to hear a couple more points. This man there in the green shirt.
Hi, hello. I've got actually a question for Zara again. You're very critical of the government and the Prime Minister. Is there anything positive you can say about them?
I think there's an opportunity to be positive at the upcoming budget if they finally decide that child poverty is something that they care about. This is a Labour government, yet this Labour government is happy to satisfy spreadsheets and keep 800,000 children in poverty. So if the 2-child benefit cap is scrapped, that would be great. I would champion that. If they reverse all austerity, if they fully fund our public services and nationalise our utilities, I think that would be a great start, and I will be very positive if that government did that. But so far, austerity and enabling genocide. And I have red lines. In politics, I think we should have red lines. Austerity and genocide are my red lines.
OK, let me hear one more point, because you've had your hand up for ages. The woman in the middle of the audience there with the glasses.
I think that it's frustrating, and if I'm going to be honest, it's a little bit embarrassing that across the political spectrum, politics currently doesn't feel like there's any focus on forward momentum. And instead, a lot of it is falling into a race to the bottom of who can make the next pop culture reference because it's going to seem cool. I'm 25 at the minute. It's really hard to see people who are older than me who I should respect and I should look up to, and I should see a lot of hope in my future and the future of young people and the young people I work with. But I don't see that, and that inspires also a lot of fear. And I think it's really worrying to sit here and look across the political spectrum that there's no focus on actually getting in with young people or getting in with talking to people. It's just, I'm going to make a pop culture reference. I want to know how the kids are doing. And that doesn't feel like it works.
So you're unimpressed by the lot?
I think you're totally right, and I'm so sorry you feel that way. Social media posts and going viral is about generating engagement. It's not about power.
All right.
This isn't action. It's brand management dressed up as militancy. It's about what we can actually do and deliver for people like you. And I'm so sad to hear you say how that's made you feel.
Well, let's see. William, I'm just going to move on. Okay, Ken, very briefly, if you're capable of it.
On this question?
Yes.
I'd just like to say something about the immigration. The question was about two separate things. Sexual violence against women would have a serious problem. And it's wrong to mix it up with the immigration crisis, I think. I am a very liberal person on all this. I'm extremely proud to live in a society which is multicultural, multi-ethnic, and compared to most other countries, we're quite harmonious, we're tolerant, we've managed it. London's a very successful city in that respect, and long may it remain so. But we do have, even for someone like me, an immigration problem now. It's one of the problems failed to go. It goes back to the Boris wave. It goes back to introducing a visa system, a points-based visa system, which at one point was increasing our population by about 1 million people a year, coming here for jobs with their families and not going back when the visa had run out, and exacerbated by these people coming over illegally. So those of us on the liberal, moderate side of politics have got to accept that the public, one of the reasons for public anger is they've got to tackle it, because it is actually damaging our race relations. It's making people more sensitive and aware of it. And people need to see it's under control. And we're only admitting, as we want to admit, honest people in the quantities we can handle to do things we need. And I hope the parties again will get together to do that without too much party political wrangling.
I mean, the vast majority of asylum
really quickly, Zara, I'm not going to fit in the other questions.
As genuine asylum seekers. So I think this rhetoric that there are honest and good people is this framing for us to demonise some of the most marginalised and the most vulnerable. And just to Ken's point about immigration, how would you address an ageing population? How would you address the crises in social care and the NHS? And when you've got governments that are talking about building council homes and building housing, where do we get the workers from when it comes to...
All right, I tell you what, Ken, forgive me, because we're quite a long way from the original question, and I've got 3 more that I want to fit in. Immigration is clearly a very important topic, and we deal with it regularly on this programme, but I'm just going to move on for now, or else we won't get the other questions in, which I know you wanted to ask, because otherwise we wouldn't have picked them. So, before I do, let me tell you that next week we're in Loughborough. Andy Burnham is on the panel, another man rumoured to be interested in the top job. Do shed any light on that, Alex, since you're sitting there, if you'd like to. The week after that, we're in Watford. So if you live in or around Loughborough or Watford and you want to be on the programme, put your question, follow the instructions on the website, and hopefully we will see you there. OK, Charlotte Rook, where are you? Off you go.
Can we trust the BBC?
Can we trust the BBC? That is your question. Well, the BBC has uncomfortably been in the news a lot this week. Just to put it in context, last week, The Telegraph published a leaked memo from an independent advisor to the BBC's Editorial Standards Committee and expressed serious concern, amongst other things, about the editing of a panorama, and in particular a speech made by Donald Trump at the time of the storming of the Capitol building in 2021. The BBC has apologised for that. Donald Trump, as you know, is threatening to sue. Danny.
I don't think you can trust the BBC at the moment. And what we saw the other day is indicative of a broader prejudice, a bias that is endemic in the corporation. And it's right that they've apologised. It's right the senior leadership has taken responsibility. I was impressed by that. And clearly things have to be put right. I think what we've seen is a problem in the culture of all of our institutions, actually, that they've been taken over by probably perfectly well-meaning and decent people who don't realise their own biases, who think that they're neutral because they think, like everyone else they have dinner with thinks. And actually they do have political prejudices, they have political preferences. And the corporation has become a monoculture without dissenting voices, without anyone who might say, hang on, why are we stitching up Donald Trump? So we need a change of culture, and that will only happen with a change of management. And that, ultimately, it's a public corporation. The government appoints the people who run it. We need a government that understands the values of the people of this country, believes in them, isn't going to allow the takeover of our institutions by this progressive agenda, and insists on proper leadership and proper management.
Ken?
I'm a great fan of the BBC. I don't think it has systematic failings. It's a great national institution. And it's my main source of views, and it's probably one of the best sources of news in the world. I'm a total opponent of Donald Trump, who I think is a danger to the world in very many ways. Having said that, I think this is outrageous. What happened on Panorama should be dealt with very severely. What they did was actually alter the meaning, the order of a particular speech in order to improve their case, just in case the audience might have any doubts that he had actually deliberately incited the riot, whether he did or not, I don't know. But they stiffened up his language. They were making a point. Journalists of that kind should never work for the BBC. In my opinion, that's been done in a newspaper. Altering a quotation, a decent newspaper would decide that journalist was not really upholding professional standards of journalism, should be dealt with severely. Obviously, some people have got to be held to account, and I don't know enough about the internal arrangements to know whether the right people have resigned. What I would like to know, in order to make sure this never happens again, if you possibly can, is what is being done about the people in Panorama, the actual editorial team and the journalists who actually were altering the evidence they were showing, were improving a speech to improve the case they were trying to make, the worst possible thing. If policemen had done that when investigating allegations against suspects of a crime, they would be in very serious problems again. So the best thing the BBC could do is not repeat the mistake of trying to cover it all up and keep it out of the news, because that's, unfortunately, human nature makes that an instinct in lots of large corporations, and it's wrong. What I'd like to know is what on earth is being done about the so-called journalists in Panorama who were responsible for this outrage and have let down the reputations of a very important profession in this country.
Lots of hands up here. Let's try and get round. Yes, the man at the back in the white shirt.
Ken, I'll accept the excuses there, but ultimately the BBC put their stamp on that programme. And, you know, the public aren't stupid. We know that there's politically leaning news sources, but at the end of the day, the taxpayers pay for the BBC. And I don't mind if the BBC do want to lean either way, depending on which government's in power. No, but either we should not pay that TV licence fee, or we should be able to vote for who's in charge of the BBC.
OK. Man here towards the front.
Backtracking slightly, but I noticed Mr Clark said there was no link between immigration and sexual violence against women and girls. I wondered if he has anything to say about the grooming gangs of largely Pakistani descent blighting our communities across our country?
That's a perfectly valid question, but we've moved on, so if you'll forgive me, I'll stick with the subject in hand.
The reason I didn't come in was I wasn't asked to come in. I have strong feelings in immigration, which I gave in my reply, and I'm certainly not going to start putting in racial connotations into what we have to do about immigration or crime or anything else.
The woman behind you, yes, in the blue sweater.
Is it right that the buck stops here at the top? Is it right that the people at the top go for things that have happened further down in the company, not just the BBC, but it always seems to be right at the very top, those people resign. What happens to the people that have actually done this? You know,
do you think they shouldn't have resigned?
You need both levels.
I think not necessarily. They shouldn't resign.
OK, all right. The man at the very back there.
When is Donald Trump going to be held to account for inciting a riot on the Capitol, the centre of American democracy? And yet we're talking about a couple of guys who did some poor editing in a Panorama programme.
OK.
Does Reform think we should prosecute those who do not pay the BBC licence fee?
Danny, do you want to answer that?
That's a good question. Well, if it's illegal, obviously it needs to be prosecuted, but I would expect extreme lenience in that case. It's a very minor offence, and we've got enough genuine criminals on our streets that should take the attention of the police and the prosecutors. I mean, I think the gentleman at the back made a valid point, which is that if there is to be a national broadcaster, it needs to be publicly accountable. And if it's to be paid for nationally, whether that's through a licence fee or through taxation, we need the government to insist on impartiality. I think the funding model is a big question we can all debate, but fundamentally, if it's a public corporation, it needs to be impartial. It needs to be properly accountable, ultimately, to Parliament.
Woman in the pink sweater.
With AI becoming more accessible and more powerful, how are we going to safeguard against misinformation moving forward?
OK, well, that's a very good question. But I will let you answer the first question, so which is, can we trust the BBC?
I have to say that the BBC does not have a left-wing bias. Academic studies show that there is disproportionate coverage and airtime of government framing. If you think about the focus on fiscal discipline over the human cost of austerity, think back to the strikes and the focus being on the disruption that was caused rather than why workers are going on strike. And also the BBC's coverage of Gaza has been truly shameful. if we think about the refusal to use the word occupation, the refusal to air the documentary Gaza, Doctors Under Attack. And the fundamental point I'm trying to make is that we need a healthy, independent BBC because it holds power to account. This BBC has not been doing that, but I can't allow Danny and others to make points that essentially weaken our public media and tighten political control. The buck lies with the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, who's ultimately responsible for the BBC. And Lisa Nandy's taken donations from David Cogan, the football regulator. Keir Starmer has too. So when we talk about cronyism in the Tory party, it's smelly in the Labour Party as well. It stinks. And also when it comes to the Culture Secretary using Parliament to smear people as anti-Semites for saying Maccabi Tel Aviv fans have a history of football hooliganism, if Lisa Nandy had any self-respect, she would resign over the BBC, over the football regulator donations, and also using Parliament to smear people.
You think Lisa Nandy should resign over the BBC?
Look, we need a strong BBC, an independent BBC, like we've talked about, and an impartial BBC. When we talk about the rise of AI, when we talk about deepfakes, the social media misinformation, we need a journalism that we can all rely on to tell the truth, that is accurate and reliable, that we can all depend on, even more so. That is why the BBC is such one of our greatest cultural institutions. We need to support the BBC, but I also think that when they do make mistakes, that they own up to them, that they are accountable, that they are transparent, and they rectify them quickly. But we as a government stand ready to support the BBC because we all need it. You know, you're all here this evening, you're watching at home, supporting the BBC and their licence fee. It is essential to our news and our source of information here in the UK.
OK, let me hear a couple more points before I move on. Yes, woman here.
As someone who studied political communications here in London, I do worry that the more we talk about the BBC and ITV and all these big corporations with our news, we're turning people towards social media and outlets that may not give them correct partial news, meaning that we're going to have misinformation spreading, but also extremism that sadly we're seeing a lot in this country at the moment.
OK. All right, listen, I'm going to stop it there simply because I've got two more questions to fit in, and I won't unless I move on. Let me hear from Andrew Johnson. There you are.
We're all desperately waiting for public services to get better, but none of us wants to pay more tax. Are we all just bad at maths?
All right. Well, you've got a laugh from the audience for that. Listen, Ken, I'm going to come to you first as former Chancellor. What's your answer?
I think it's true. Firstly, I agree with the questioner. What is popular, what will give you the opinion polls that you want tomorrow, is to say that we can have the best Scandinavian-type public services, but we're going to have taxes at least as low as the lowest American states, and that will put you miles ahead in the polls. That is why many chancellors, beginning with Geoffrey Howe in my time and since, have faced the dilemma which the present one's faced ever since she came in. She's got to be unpopular. She's got to raise taxation because we need more revenue. We have a terrible, terrible debt problem. We cannot carry this burden of debt very much further. It will crush and send us into crisis. She's going to have to cut public expenditure. She's going to have to raise taxation substantially. It's like Geoffrey Howe in 1981. It's like my first budget, George Osborne. This happened several times before. And your duty, you came into politics because you have opinions about, you think, rather the national interest, how you're going to actually help the long-term future of the country. Do what's in the national interest, and it's your job to put your tin hat on and get with it. We cannot have welfare payments, for example, exploding at the rate we are. What she failed to get through wasn't welfare cuts. It was slightly slowing the pace at which people are demanding and getting all kinds of extraordinary welfare payments. I hope the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party, both of whom also say the growth of welfare payments has got to be cut, would sit down with the government and agree a programme they would get through Parliament against these novice, naive Labour backbenchers who just want to do things that will get popular in the local newspapers when they vote for it tomorrow. These are tough, difficult times. And we will, if you do the tough things now, get through to an improving scene where people's living standards are improving again and not declining as they are at the moment, because GDP per person is actually going down. Our GDP may be going up, but that's because of the numbers of people immigrating.
So obviously Labour said that they would not raise income tax, VAT or national insurance. And that was their manifesto. Do you think they should raise income tax specifically?
No political party should make daft promises of that kind in any election manifesto. When you're trying to be in government, not just protesting about government as some do, but actually thinking you're going to run it, you have no idea what's going to happen in the next 5 years. Events, dear boy, events. Okay. You will face complicated crises where you have to take on-balance decisions and see what the outturn is. You will hope after 5 years that things are obviously improving. People accept that they hated what you did at the time, but actually perhaps somebody had to do it, and it's getting better now. And then, as after the amazingly unpopular budget of 1981, which Geoffrey Howe introduced, he was the most hated man in the country. By 1983, the Thatcher government, we got a bigger majority.
All right. Well,
because it began to produce this upturn in the economy, which is what the public are most demanding. Show you know what you're doing. Stop bothering about these dozens of opinion polls which don't tell you anything about what it is your duty to do.
Danny, you've been trying to get into the last couple of minutes.
Well, that was tremendous, and I honour Ken and his experience here. I agree with him on welfare reform, by the way, that's essential. I don't agree with him, or I think with the audience, who seem to be applauding the idea of tax rises. And the gentleman suggests that in order to get public services, we need more taxation. I'm afraid that isn't the case. We've been pouring more and more money into the public sector for years, and the productivity, the output you get for that money, is declining. Yes, even under this famous austerity, public spending went up. Certainly in the last 5 years it has, significantly, and particularly in the NHS. Outcomes are worse. Yeah. And that is because we have a system that needs proper reform. Right. And what that needs fundamentally...
Does that mean? Selling it off?
No, let's just get on to public services in general.
No, I agree with that.
Thank you. So to the gentleman's point about improving public services, reform councils have been getting a fair bit of attention in recent months, quite rightly, because the public are interested in us.
Should we just say why they're getting attention? So out of the... Is it 13 councils? Correct me if I'm wrong, Danny. 8 are indicated they are going to raise taxes, raise council tax, despite at least some of them having come in and say they were going to reduce it.
Well, yes. So what's happening is the local government in this country is nearly bankrupt. Other parties which do not get anything like the attention that reform has are genuinely bankrupt. Conservative councils, Labour councils going out of business.
But the point is, once they got to the coalface and they actually had to run these councils, they realised they couldn't cut taxes.
Well, we want to cut taxes, absolutely. It was never party policy. No, sorry, there was never party policy. Nigel Farage never said that we were going to cut council tax.
No, but some of the councils did, Danny. Come on, the councils did when they were trying to get elected.
That's right. So that is regrettable. And we have 1,000 new councillors elected from nowhere. If some of them put something stupid on their leaflet, they shouldn't have, and I agree with Ken about that. But the party policy was never to cut council tax until we can get on top of spending, which, by the way, is our national policy too. We're not going to reduce taxes until we can retrench public spending overall. But the way we can do that, and coming back to local government, in the councils that we run, we have identified tens of millions of savings.
Then why are you putting up council tax?
Because there's still an absolute crisis in our local government. And their social care costs are out of control. But improvements are being made. So absolutely. So there needs to be properly funded. But we have a problem across the council sector, which is why all parties are having a crisis of one sort or another. We are committed to reform. We are making genuine cuts in wasteful spending. Tens of millions of pounds coming out of...
That's austerity, Danny.
Well, he calls austerity. It's also
austerity.
Improving things. In Derbyshire...
It's not efficiency.
In Derbyshire, quickly, we have just cleared the backlog of potholes, which is the thing that comes up all the time in local government elections. 17,000 potholes filled in the last 6 months because you have effective leadership of the council.
I live in a county with a reform council. They just won. Some of the people elected didn't even know that he'd sat during the day, so they resigned quite quickly because they couldn't take time off work. Most of them had no idea what the county council was actually responsible for. They fought on a promise of cutting waste and cutting council tax, and they've just put up the council tax by the maximum.
I don't think they did fight on that.
What they were doing, they were protesting against the failure of legitimate politics, standing for politics as amateurs, and where reform has taken over, you have a lot of complete beginners who are still doing a study as to what actually county councils are responsible to do and finding out a bit about adult social care, education, or whatever it happens to be.
Yes, well, certainly we are challenging the incumbent system, which has corrupted and bankrupted local government and is responsible for all of the problems, which is producing the sort of excessive politics of the left that we're seeing.
Excessive politics?
So
not having austerity,
well,
Danny,
yes,
which killed over 300,000 people.
Yes, indeed. So,
and has cut the average life by half a year. Austerity, Danny. You want to defend that on the BBC right now?
Well, I am going to say that we need public spending to be under control.
What does that mean?
It hasn't been for many years, and it needs to be. And we want absolute better outcomes for everybody, and particularly that means for the lowest paid families in crisis. The way we do that is not by pumping more and more money into a welfare system that produces long-term generational poverty, that breaks down families and communities. We need an economy that actually works. That doesn't mean taxing everybody to death.
How will austerity grow the economy, Danny? How will austerity grow the economy? That's not Keynesian economics,
well, let me try and explain quickly. If you reduce taxation, you stimulate growth, you cause businesses to invest in jobs, you put money in people's pockets which they spend on goods and services. That is the way to get the economy growing. That is the way to fight poverty. Your model is socialism, and it doesn't work.
So I know you want to come in, and of course that's you want to come in, but I'm just going to hear from our audience as well. So the man in the back in the blue top.
Sorry, any fiscal prudence that's suggested you categorise as austerity, which doesn't bode well for any hard decisions that your party may make.
OK, I'll come to you in a minute. Hang on, just let me hear a bit more from yours. Yes, man here in the blue sweater.
Evidently, we have a spending problem. So is it not wise then to have something like a constitutional debt break to prevent people from parties from constantly spending?
OK, man in the colourful tie, yeah.
Yeah, the thing issues of about taxation when there is no production does not make sense, because Britain, which was an industrial power, has collapsed completely, both the service industry and the manufacturing industry. So taxing people just for its own sake when there is no services, when cost of living is very high, that's why people are complaining. So the government should really look in retraining people who are going to go in manufacturing and service industry, get people back into work so that people should be able to afford. Okay. Now people cannot even afford cost of living. That's the problem.
Person next to you.
I think it's all about honesty. We've got a Chancellor and a Prime Minister that stand at the box say, we're not going to raise taxes a year ago. They raise taxes. And then they go, we're not going to raise taxes again. And then 6 months later, everybody knows that taxes are going to rise. They're not on working people. They don't know what a working person is. I think it's 45 grand they said was a working person. That categorises teachers and nurses and that. Do they not class them as working people? Just about honesty. If they stood up there and said, we need to raise taxes to do this, I think people would accept it a lot more.
Alex. Hang on, let's let Alex answer. Ken, just for a minute, let's let Alex answer, because otherwise she's not going to get time to answer.
No, you're right. We have a choice here between austerity, and Rachel Reeves will have a choice at the budget, on austerity or investing in our public services. And Ken is right. You play the hand you're dealt at the time, right? This is the situation of where we are right now. We can make choices based on Labour values, and it goes back to what I was saying around how the decisions that we make as a Labour government highlight what the priorities are and the priorities of the public. It's about ensuring that we have taxed private schools in order to make sure that we can fix the roofs of primary schools and feed children so they have full bellies going to school in the morning. That's what those decisions are
even
making.
A year ago, there were plenty of people from the Institute of Fiscal Studies onwards saying, you're going to have to raise taxes. And so Rachel is now saying, it's all very different now. There are plenty of people saying a year ago, this is what's going to happen.
And you chose the wrong tax by putting this huge tax on employment, of all things.
This is about fairness, right? This is about fairness and ensuring that we have a fair fiscal base, that our taxation system is fair, and that we're all paying our way here. Like, we all have to budget responsibly in our own homes, right? We all have to prioritise our spending.
But a government budget is not the same as a household budget, Alex.
What's important here, though, is we're not just paying off our credit card debt, that we don't want to be paying off the debt of our country for future generations here. This is about ensuring that we can invest in going forward in our future, that we can prioritise growth in our economy, that we can make sure that we have public public services fit for the future after 14 years of austerity? And government debt, country debt, that quadrupled under the Conservative government.
What about that manifesto, Alex? What about the
more.
manifesto promise? The manifesto promise could not have been clearer. Ken has just called it daft. Lucy Powell, the new deputy leader, says we have to stick to that promise of not raising taxes. Is that what's going to happen?
I'm not. I would like my job in the morning. I'm not going to sit here and preempt what's going to be in the budget under Rachel Reeves. But what I can tell you is the decisions that she is making will be based on fairness. They will be fully costed. We're awaiting the OBR forecast to make sure that we are being responsible with the government's finances, with the taxpayers' finances. But what's important here is that we are doing what the country want in terms of investing in our public services, rebuilding the country following 14 years of austerity, where our prisons were in crisis, our NHS was in crisis, and our schools were literally crumbling. This is what we need to be doing, is fixing the foundations, and that's what this Labour government is doing.
The glaring omission in all of this... The glaring omission in all of this is no one's mentioned wealth taxes. The super rich in our country are very rich. We're the 6th largest economy in the world. If we had a 2% wealth tax on assets over 10 million, anyone in the room got assets over £10 million. Well, actually, only 20,000 people in the country do. If we taxed assets over 10 million, we would generate £24 billion a year. If we equalised capital gains tax with income tax, that's £17 billion. The magic money tree exists. It's in the City of London, and it's with the billionaires. But what you find is the lack of political will, because these parties are bankrolled by the billionaires, so they're definitely not going to tax them.
Andrew, you asked this question. What do you make of what you're hearing?
Well, I think there are just different levers you can do with tax. So, I think maybe Rachel Reeves should have been honest at the beginning of the situation we faced. It feels like she's doing it a year too late in terms of thinking about income tax. But there are other things you can do in terms of maybe reducing some taxes to encourage spending. So I was interested, I think it was the Lib Dems who said today or yesterday about cutting VAT in pubs and restaurants by 5%. That would all get us out celebrating for Christmas. So we'd all love that. And that would raise maybe more tax because people would be going out spending. So I think there's different levers that you can do on tax.
OK. Man, so towards the back there. Yes, with the white shirt, yeah.
Couldn't Labour really foresee the problems that's coming down the way within the coming years and really do their finances and plan their finances accordingly?
Can Labour not foresee them? Is that what you're asking? I couldn't quite hear.
Yes, couldn't Labour foresee the budget challenges coming down the way?
Them, yeah.
OK. And then there was someone... Oh, yes, with the glasses, a man with the glasses.
Zara doesn't realise it's the rich who pay most of the taxes. You start taxing the rich will leave, and the poor will stay even poorer.
They won't leave.
They are leaving.
They will not leave.
They're already leaving.
They will leave.
This is some scaremongering that's done. That if you tax the super rich, and like I said, the 20,000 people in the country have assets over £10 million. They are not going to leave their assets and just move to another country.
Yes,
their kids are in the private schools here. Their culture, their lifestyle is very much in this country. And I think that's scaremongering to justify nurses and teachers in Coventry South paying more taxes than the billionaires, than Amazon and Facebook, who get to negotiate their taxation deals with the government. I think that's criminally unfair. I think we shouldn't be taxing work. We should be taxing wealth more. Because
I just want to come in on the... Thank you. I just want to come in. It's really wrong to say that that high wealth taxes, high taxation doesn't drive away the wealthy. It really does. 17,000 high net worth individuals left this country last year. But worse than that, Zara, 150,000 young people, talented young people, have left this country because they don't see this country as being the place for them. So that is the chronic result of a system and a government that doesn't respect wealth creation and that thinks, as you do, that somehow people with wealth have somehow stolen it from other people and that it should be removed from them by the government and redistributed. Of course, they do pay their fair share.
Well, we can argue about that.
No,
wealth isn't taxed as fairly as work.
No, but hang on. The wealthiest people do pay proportionately far more of their income and, of course, their wealth than other people. And as the gentleman says, this is the source of growth in our country. We have to get behind the wealth creators. That is the only place to get taxation from. It's also the place that creates, it's the source of jobs. It's the source of the businesses that we all rely on. We need to get behind entrepreneurs, yes, tax them properly, but crucially invite the wealthy of the world to come and set up businesses here, invest in our country and stay here and make a home. We will all be the beneficiaries of that.
All right, I've got 10 minutes left. And I want to fit in this question, because lots of you asked all sorts of questions about social media tonight, and they seem to more or less focus around this one. So, Margot Vitale, there you are.
Should we follow Australia's lead and ban social media for people under 16?
Yes, so Australia is banning, and it's the only country to do this so far, is banning social media for under 16s, and that is due to come into place from next month, from the 10th of September, and we will see how that works. December, sorry, not September. That would have already happened in that case. From December. Zara?
I think we need to regulate social media companies way more than what we do. We've seen legislation in Parliament that's been watered down. For example, I get some racist abuse, a lot of racist abuse, death threats, and I just know that Twitter will do, or X will do.
But what about the question?
Yes.
Banning social media for under 16s, which is obviously a big step.
But I think it's a conversation about social media in general.
But what about answering that question? Should we be following Australia's lead and banning social media for people under 16?
I think we should regulate more, and I think we should restrict certain websites and certain platforms, but to say that we should have a blanket ban on social media for young people, I don't think is fair. I think young people who don't have youth centres, who don't have community spaces, have found community virtually, but I don't think a blanket ban is going to help the mental health epidemic that we've got in our country. I think we need to have more regulation, and I think social media companies should definitely be following legislation that stops abuse and some of the kind of things that we see disseminated on there, the fake news, the disinformation, but I think a blanket ban, I don't think would be...
You don't support?
No, I don't.
OK, let's hear a bit from Odyssey. A man there in the blue sweater.
These products are designed to be addictive. Should we be having a public health campaign around the perils of social media addiction?
And do you think that would make a difference?
I do think it would make a difference.
OK, and the woman behind you, you've got your hand up as well.
I think the genie's out of the bottle now, and it will be terribly difficult to change that. I think more regulation is a good idea, but I think banning it will be extremely difficult.
OK. Man here in the glasses.
As someone who is close to that age category, I am 19.
That's exactly why I picked you out.
I wouldn't necessarily say yes or no to it now, but I think something needs to be done to find out what the consequences are of social media. No one would make a decision if you don't know what the impacts are. Has there ever been something done in this country to find out what the impacts actually are on young people?
There's all sorts of studies, some of which suggest that social media has increased anxiety and depression and other. They come out with different results, but certainly there is information there. Can I just ask you, since what did you say, you're 19?
19.
So obviously you've grown up in this era.
Yes.
If someone had said to you, right, you can't have social media until you're 16, would you, at the age you are now, looking back, would you have thought that was a good idea or a bad idea? A good idea.
I would now. At the time, obviously, no. If you're 16 and your parents go, you can't have that, obviously you want it, even if you didn't want it in the first place because your parents said no. But looking back now, even 3 years later, yes, I think that it would have been beneficial.
Alex?
I agree with the lady at the back. I think the genie's out of the bottle here, and just banning something isn't going to work, especially for teenagers and kids who would be able to get around this quite easily. Look, what this is about is ensuring that we do have proper, effective regulation in place to keep children safe online, first and foremost. This is also about education and enabling children to feel empowered, but also to feel safe online, that parents, educators, teachers, we all know about what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate. And ultimately, it's about ensuring that we're all sort of responsible in this. We've all got a part to play here. I want to make sure that my own children are growing up with those youth clubs, that they have safe spaces that are not on a screen, whilst recognising that these places can offer comfort and support to children as well, in a way that they don't have it. They can find their communities. But this is all about making sure that we get the balance right. You can't just ban something and make people think that it's going to stop. It has to be backed up.
Well, obviously that's what
up with regulation and that.
That's what Australia is trying to
do. Well, I will be interested to watch what happens in Australia and whether or not it works. I mean, good luck to them, but I can't see it being realistic.
Danny?
Well, we're conducting an extraordinary and unprecedented experiment on our children's brains, and I think it is right to pause that and to think, is this a safe thing to be doing, and wait for data to demonstrate that it's not unsafe. I'm very, very worried about what we're doing to our young people. I think the issue is probably with the hardware. I mean, it's the fact that you have the internet in your pocket, whether you can age verification for different social media sites. You've just got the internet there. I think it's very, very harmful. So my instincts are in favour. Nevertheless, recognise it's a challenge. I mean, remember, all the indicators of the things we used to worry about 20, 30 years ago about, teenage violence, drugs, alcoholism, joyriding, all the things when the kids were on the streets fighting, teenage pregnancy, all of those problems that we used to worry about, all of those indicators are down because now we have young people in their bedrooms basically experiencing mental health problems. So we've swapped one problem for another. So let's not just assume that by banning it, which again, how do we do it effectively is a big question, but assuming we could, what are those young people going to do? How are we going to bring them up in a way that actually helps them to socialise and to grow up well? That is a bigger social challenge about how our families work and how our communities work. And I think we should be thinking about the health and well-being of children and young people growing up in our communities now, rather than just whether it's a question of the hardware. But yes, I'm very opposed to the proliferation of social media among young people.
And the Online Harms Bill, which has been taken on by the Labour government but was introduced by the Conservative government, obviously when you were a Conservative, I presume you supported it then. Reform now does not support it. So have you just changed your mind?
Well, I only half supported it, to be fair, but I probably voted for it because that's what you do as a MP following your party. I think there are real concerns about free speech and about the regulation of the internet. But my concern is, discussion here is about young people. I think we have to let older people make their own minds up. But really, they need to be brought up.
So you would scrap the Online Safety Act, which is brought in protections on extreme pornography, child sexual abuse, intimate image abuse, ensuring that our children aren't subjected to illegal material online. You would scrap that?
No, I wouldn't, Alex. I would not scrap that.
But that's your policy.
No, our policy is to reform it, to ensure that free speech is protected. Yes, you're absolutely right. There have been some real benefits. It's a testament to that bill that we've seen real improvements in access to pornography in particular. That doesn't necessarily have to be done at the expense of free speech.
I've not got long, and I need to get you in, Ken, but I just want to... Yes, there's a man over there with glasses, Yeah,
hello. I've got the real honour of being a head teacher in West London, in Feltham, of a secondary school. So this question is really on my mind. I think we should ban it. I think it's unbelievably dangerous. But what makes me feel really optimistic is children are actually opting out of social media. So they are making that decision to not use it. In fact, the age group that are using it the most are 30 to 45. And for all the kind of doom and gloom that we've heard today, I've never been so optimistic because our young people will be in those seats. I have the utmost respect for all politicians, but they will be leading this country. They're not taking their news from social media. So I just want to assure everybody that the kids are okay and we are going to be okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am optimistic is not a phrase we often hear on this programme, and it makes a very pleasant change. Now, Ken, I was told that you don't even have a mobile phone, so I don't know how involved you want to be in this conversation.
I've got one, but I stopped using it.
You stopped using it. Should we follow Australia's lead and ban social media for people under 16?
Well, I have to be careful not to be an old fogey, because I've just never entered the digital age. I just can't see the point in being rung up all the time as I walk around. My instincts, rather simply expressed, my instincts are in favour, because I simply...
In favour of the ban?
A ban. Yeah. But I think now I would wait to see what the evidence is for Australia as they've done it. What worries me is the change in the social relationships and social developments of our children. I find it incomprehensible that anybody of any age can spend literally hours each day studying a pad with exchanging views and insults with people they don't know. And I'm sure that would have a harmful effect upon anybody. And that when you're growing up, the whole thing of growing up and maturing is playing with other children, being taught by good teachers, the interactions you develop, becoming a member of a healthy society and finding out who you are for yourself. And I think one reason why we have a rather troubled, but all teenagers are troubled, but a particularly troubled generation of teenagers at the moment, with being diagnosed with mental health and so on, is the ordinary interaction with other people is being interfered with by this peculiar, absolutely pointless exchange of constant interaction on these electronic machines all around the world.
I'm afraid we are out of time.
I'm interested to see whether the Australians, who presumably also have problems with teenage angst, how they get on, and I would judge it on the evidence myself, now that they've gone first.
There we are. There we have it. The word from Ken. Why does anyone want to talk to anyone on social media? I don't know. Quite a lot of people do it after this programme, I've got to tell you. That is the end of this programme. We are out of time, I'm afraid. Thank you very much to the panel. Thank you very much to all of you for coming along here to St Luke's tonight. And, of course, thank you to you at home for watching. From Question Time in central London, bye-bye.